Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
I opened the gift like I had every year before, carefully, slowly, hoping to stretch out the moment, praying somewhere deep down that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas morning would be different from the last few. The box was light, almost weightless, but I still went through the motions, peeling back the red foil wrapping like I was holding something precious, something fragile. The moment I lifted the lid, silence dropped like a stone into the middle of the living room, and all I saw was nothing. Just the empty, beige cardboard interior. No note. No card. No joke tucked inside. Just space. And then, from across the coffee table, Chloe's voice cut the air like a blade. Just like your promises, she said, biting each word like it tasted sour. Then came the laughter. From her. From Diane. Even Tyler cracked a half grin, though he looked away right after, like he regretted it the second it left his face. I looked down again, at the box, at the nothing. My hands tightened around it before I set it back into my lap like it had weighed again. Like it mattered. I said, thank you. That's all I said. Not with sarcasm. Not with anger. I made my voice flat still, like a pond right before the first ripple. I put the lid back on and set the box aside neatly on the floor, tucked it next to the tree like it belonged there. Then I reached for the wrapping paper that had already been torn through by the rest of them, boxes of wireless headphones, cologne, a new coat for Tyler, a bracelet for Chloe, all for me. I'd woken up at 5 to make breakfast. Sausage, eggs, coffee, even homemade cinnamon rolls. Nobody mentioned it. Not even a nod. The room had that tight feeling like it does after a fight you don't talk about, just a dense, invisible fog pressing against your ribs. Diane was the first to break it, standing up and collecting her gifts without looking at me. She had that move, like she was being efficient, like the cleanup was her excuse not to meet my eyes. I spent the next 20 minutes cleaning up alone. Nobody offered to help. They drifted off one by one, Tyler back to his room with his headphones already on, Chloe to her car for a quick drive to a friend's house, and Diane upstairs to God knows what. Probably to text her sister about how I took the joke too seriously again. The only sound in the house was the faint ticking of the wall clock and the soft crinkle of wrapping paper as I folded it into neat little squares, even though I knew nobody would reuse it. I tied up the trash bag, tied it again like it might split open from the weight of all that fakery, and carried it out to the bin beside the garage. The cold air hit me like a slap. December in Michigan doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up and bites. I stood there by the trash can for a full minute, staring at the thin clouds rolling past the morning sun. I remember thinking, this is the kind of cold that tells the truth. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't smile at you while it stabs. It just hurts, plain and honest. When I walked back inside, I didn't take off my coat. I looked around the empty living room, trees still blinking, ornaments still swinging slightly from where someone had bumped into it. My coffee sat cold on the table. Half a cinnamon roll remained on Diane's plate, untouched. I grabbed my keys from the hook, wallet from the drawer, and walked out the door without saying a damn thing. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell. I didn't leave a note, or a dramatic pause, or a speech about gratitude, or what Christmas is supposed to mean. I just drove. And before you assume, no, I wasn't heading to a bar. I haven't touched a drink in over 730 days. I count because nobody else does. I wasn't looking to numb the sting. I was looking for something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know what it was yet. Maybe peace. Maybe revenge. Maybe just a place where I didn't feel like a joke in my own home. I passed the gas station on Main, then the church where Diane used to take the kids every other Sunday before we stopped pretending. I didn't even glance at the old bar on 8th where I used to crawl into a bottle and forget I was a husband, a father, a man. I just kept going. Windows down. Radio off. Letting the winter air scrape against my face until it hurt. There's something clean about being alone on Christmas Day. Something pure about not being needed, not for money, not for apologies, not for cooking breakfast and pretending like everything isn't falling apart under the tree. I drove past town limits and into the back roads, the kind that used to feel like freedom when I was 18 and stupid. It's funny. At 55, they still do. You know what I realized somewhere between mile marker 31 and that old gas station with the broken, open sign? That empty box? It wasn't the worst gift I ever got. It was the most honest. And I had no idea yet just how much honesty was about to unravel. Because while they were still in that house laughing and sipping coffee, I was on my way to somewhere they never thought I'd go again. Somewhere they'd all forgotten still existed. Somewhere only I remembered. And it wasn't a bar. There's this moment that comes, usually sometime after the second cup of black coffee, when the weight of silence feels louder than any conversation you could ever have. That's when your thoughts start looping, playing the same 5 or 6 questions on repeat, until they blur into one long echo you can't escape. For me, the loudest question of them all, the one that refuses to shut up even when I try to drown it in noise, is this: how the hell did I become the villain in my own damn story? I wasn't always this guy, you know. The one who shows up early, stays quiet, eats last, and gets forgotten first. That wasn't me 10 years ago. Back then, I had a small contracting business, a Chevy Silverado that still had some pride in its engine, and a family that actually gave a damn when I walked through the door. I was a provider. I was present. I was enough. But it doesn't take much to tip the balance when you're a man, just one bad year, and suddenly, you're the guy they whisper about when you leave the room. It started with the business going under. That winter was brutal, contracts dried up, bills stacked higher than belief, and I kept thinking the next month would be the one I'd bounce back. I used up the savings, then the credit cards, and then pride stepped out of the way so I could borrow from Jason, my picture-perfect younger brother who's never had dirt under his fingernails a day in his life. He smiled when he handed me that check, but there was a flicker behind his eyes like he was cashing in on something I didn't see coming. I drank more after that. At first, just to sleep. Then to forget. Then because it was the only thing that didn't ask anything from me. Alcohol doesn't give a damn if you're behind on your mortgage or if your daughter rolls her eyes every time you talk. It doesn't care when your wife tells you she's tired of carrying the emotional load. It just keeps pouring. So yeah, I spiraled. I missed Chloe's high school play. I yelled too loud when Tyler wrecked the Corolla. I forgot Diane's birthday twice. But that was 8 years ago. And here's what nobody talks about when you get clean. Nobody believes you mean it. Not the first week, not the first month, not even the first year. I got sober 2 years ago last February. Cold turkey. No rehab, no fanfare. Just sweat, shakes, and shame. I clawed my way out of that hole inch by inch, cutting off the parts of me that were rotten and trying to stitch together whatever was left. And I didn't ask for applause. But damn it, I thought someone might notice. I started paying back debts, one envelope at a time. I took on late-night shifts at the warehouse, hauling freight with guys half my age. I paid for Chloe's last 3 semesters straight. That's almost 42 months of rent money, if you think about it. I helped Tyler when he got fired from the car wash and didn't tell Diane because I didn't want to make him feel smaller than he already did. I fixed the leaking roof, installed a new furnace, and even stopped bringing up the fact that Diane hasn't said, "I love you," since the Cubs won the World Series. So why is it that when I open my mouth, all they hear is a lie? I don't think it's just me. I think there's been a whisper campaign going on behind the scenes. And if I had to put money on who's been fanning the flames, it'd be Jason. He always shows up when I stumble, clean shave, shiny shoes, gifts in hand, and that smug grin like he's rescuing them from the mess I made. Chloe's car? She thinks he helped buy it. The student loans? She's under the impression he chipped in. He probably lets her believe it, too. Tyler got a job through Jason's old college buddy. Diane? I caught her texting him once late at night. She said it was about Chloe's graduation planning, but I don't buy that for a second. I'm not saying he wants my family. I think it's worse. I think he wants to be the better version of me in their eyes. The Rick that could have been, if only he hadn't screwed everything up. And I let it happen. I was too busy trying not to drown to notice he was filling their life rafts with subtle poison. It was after that thought that I decided to drive out to the storage unit on Oak and Hillcrest. I hadn't been there in over a year. I kept a few things there, stuff Diane didn't want cluttering the house. Boxes of old photos, my dad's war medals, some legal files from the bankruptcy. The unit smelled like dust and guilt, and it took me a second to remember which box was which. When I found the drawer in the back cabinet, I knew exactly what I was looking for. I opened it, and there it was, right where I left it, an old black journal with a cracked leather cover, folded court papers from the custody battle my brother had with his ex-wife, and the burner phone. I bought it during my worst stretch, back when I didn't trust myself not to drunk dial Diane or scream at Chloe through tears. But I never threw it away. I picked it up and flipped it on. The screen blinked to life. 6 unread messages. 3 saved voicemails. And 1 contact labeled truth. I stared at it for a long minute. Then I sat down on the cold concrete floor and started listening. New Year's Day came without ceremony, without fireworks or noise or any of the traditional distractions people use to convince themselves a clean slate is more than just a marketing gimmick with champagne. For me, it arrived wrapped in snow, silence, and the creaking wood of a 50-year-old cabin 2 hours north of town, tucked back behind pine trees so thick they could choke the signal out of any satellite. I didn't hear the phone ring when they called, didn't listen to Diane's carefully rehearsed voice message or the sound of Chloe cracking under the pressure of her own guilt. I didn't hear Tyler's apology, mumbled and half lost in the static, or the way he tried to pass off his emotions as just being hungover. I didn't hear any of it because I wasn't home. And that wasn't by accident. I planned it, every single goddamn second of it. 2 months ago, I planted the first seed. It was nothing big at first, just a casual comment to Diane over dinner, something about a new job opportunity in Ohio, a chance to relocate, reset, get some distance from everything that's rotted between us. She acted like she wasn't listening, but I know her tells. The way her fork paused halfway to her mouth. The way she didn't blink when she said, "You do what you think is best." That's her version of a threat. Or maybe it's just a white flag from a woman too tired to care anymore. Either way, it worked. From there, it wasn't hard to steer things in the direction I needed. I stopped correcting them when they got things wrong. When Chloe snapped that Jason had helped her get the scholarship, I nodded and said, "Yeah, he's good at stuff like that." When Tyler asked if I still had the mortgage handled, I told him vaguely, "We'll figure it out soon," knowing full well the house had been paid off last summer with money I scraped together from night shifts and a quiet, humiliating sale of my father's antique watch collection. I watched as they all distanced themselves a little more each day, just far enough for me to see the cracks clearly. And in that gap, I left a trap. The burner phone I found in storage, it had more than messages. It had a recording app. It had GPS. It had access to an old cloud account I'd set up during my bender days when paranoia made more sense than trust. I didn't just listen to the messages they left for me on New Year's. I tracked the ones they sent to each other. Diane, telling Jason she can't keep covering for me. Chloe, thanking her uncle for helping with Dad's mess. Tyler, asking if Jason could help him replace the car Dad promised, even though I made the first payment on it 2 weeks before Christmas. Jason had been paying their bills quietly, strategically, and always with just enough pity in his tone to make them think they were victims, not accomplices. He told them half-truths about me, let them believe I was backsliding again, hinted that the house might be foreclosed, that I was probably hiding debts or secrets or worse. And they believed him. Not once did any of them come to me directly. They just took what he offered and decided it was enough. And that told me everything I needed to know. You don't have to scream to tell someone they're worthless. Sometimes silence does the trick just fine. So, there I was, sitting in Mike's cabin, a friend, an old army buddy who owed me a favor and didn't ask questions. He handed me the keys, pointed to the generator out back, and said, "Stay as long as you need, brother." And that's what I did. No TV, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just a battered old laptop, the burner phone, and a man with nothing left to lose. I took my time composing the email. Not because I wasn't sure what to say, but because some messages need to bleed a little before they hit send. The subject line was simple: proof. Just that. Inside, I attached audio files, Jason's voice manipulating them, Chloe's voice mocking me behind my back, Diane's quiet admissions that she stopped loving me 5 years ago but didn't have the guts to leave because she liked the health insurance. I didn't add commentary. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I let the truth speak in their own voices, their own words, their own betrayals. Because that's what they gave me for Christmas, wasn't it? An empty box. A hollow gesture wrapped in laughter and sarcasm. And this was just my version of a return gift. They called on New Year's Day because guilt is louder when the fireworks stop. Because their party hats were off and the booze had worn off and Jason was probably out of town again, just conveniently unreachable. That's when the cracks start to echo. And I didn't answer because I was already too far gone. Not geographically, emotionally. Once you cross that line where your own blood turns its back and calls it parenting, once you become a punchline in the family you built with your own damn hands, you stop caring about good timing. I pressed send on the email. Then I put the phone down, stepped outside, and lit a cigar I'd been saving for 20 years. Snow fell heavy that day, like the sky was finally done holding back. I let it cover my shoulders, melt into my hair, and I didn't flinch once. Let the world burn a little now. They wanted the truth? They just got it. The thing about truth is, it doesn't knock politely at the door and wait for someone to let it in. It kicks that son of a bitch open with both boots and walks through the house like it owns the place, dragging years of dust and rot out from under the furniture, laying it all bare for everyone to see. When I hit send on that email, just one word in the subject line, just a few files attached, I didn't imagine fireworks or tears or screams echoing through the house I used to call mine. I wasn't chasing that. I was chasing silence, the kind that comes after the impact, when the storm passes and the damage reveals itself. I didn't have to see it in person to know exactly what happened once that message landed. Diane would have been sitting at the kitchen counter, same place she always goes when she wants to feel above a situation, perched like a judge waiting to deliver the verdict. She probably opened the email thinking it was one of my sad, last-ditch apologies or some drunken ramble. But it wasn't. It was her voice first. Her own voice saying things she never thought would see the light. "I'm tired of pretending he's still a husband," she whispered into Jason's voicemail 2 months ago, "but I can't leave while he's still covering the health insurance." The same Diane who had that secret lunch every third Thursday with a man named Mark, not her coworker, not her friend, but her emotional support as she called him in another message, the one where she joked that Mark at least listened when she talked. She threw something after that. I don't know what, but I'm guessing it was the vase her sister bought for our anniversary, the one she always said was too blue anyway. Glass doesn't sound subtle when it shatters in a tiled kitchen. And I'm sure Tyler came running down to ask what the hell was going on, only to find his name sitting in that same email, buried under a file labeled rent logs. Every payment made from my bank account, not Jason's. Every dollar tracked. Not because I needed credit, but because sometimes keeping receipts is the only way to stay sane in a house that keeps rewriting history. Tyler's pride is a fragile, twitchy thing, like a deer on a frozen pond, always looking for solid ground, but never quite finding it. He probably stormed back to his room, stared at the screen for a minute, then yanked his gaming monitor off the desk in one violent motion. He used to punch walls. Now he breaks his toys instead. And Chloe. God, Chloe. That part hurt more than it should have. She was the last one I gave up on. Her voice was always the loudest in my mind, even when she wasn't around. When she read that email, when she heard her own recorded words, her calling me a pathetic shell of a man, her laughing at the idea that I'd helped her get through school, something inside her had to give. Not because she didn't mean it when she said those things, but because she thought she could say them without consequences. Because she thought I wasn't listening. The truth is, I hadn't stopped listening since the day she stopped hugging me back. She screamed, probably. She's always been dramatic like her mom, but with sharper edges. Maybe she threw her phone. Maybe she didn't say a word. Doesn't matter. The damage was done. And while all that chaos was unraveling, while the walls of their carefully curated resentment started to cave in on them, I was sitting by the window in a chair that didn't belong to me, holding a chipped mug of black coffee that tasted like firewood and old memories. The snow hadn't stopped for hours. It came down in heavy drifts, burying the tracks I'd left when I arrived, making the world around the cabin feel like it had never been touched by anything but wind and cold. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't even feel vindicated. What I felt was tired. Because this wasn't justice. This wasn't some cinematic moment where the hero gets his due and the villains learn their lesson. This was a man realizing he'd spent more energy punishing his own silence than fighting for the people who now called him a ghost. I let it happen. I let Diane's distance become routine. I let Chloe's disappointment fester. I let Tyler believe I'd quit on him when I was just trying to keep the lights on. I stopped demanding to be seen the moment they decided it was easier to look away. But even in that failure, even in all that grief and regret and worn-out forgiveness, there was still something cold and sharp at the edge of my thoughts that felt good. Not happy, not joyful, just good. Because now the cards were on the table. No more lies. No more silent treatments wrapped in fake holiday smiles. No more pretending that I hadn't tried. They knew. And knowing is the first kind of pain that might just wake someone the hell up. I sat there for hours, watching the snow fall, not moving except to refill the coffee. The fire burned low and steady beside me, casting soft orange light across the cabin walls. I wasn't waiting for a response. I didn't need one. They had the truth now, and whatever came next belonged to them. At some point, I pulled out the burner phone, flipping through the old saved messages just to remind myself how long I'd been keeping receipts. That's when I found it. A voicemail I'd forgotten existed, 6 years old, back when Chloe was still in high school and hadn't started resenting me yet. Her voice was small, softer than I remembered, like she was recording it from under her blankets late at night. Hey, Dad. I just wanted to say thanks for the ride today. And the coffee. I know you're tired and stuff, but I really like just talking. You always listen, even when I ramble. I didn't cry. I didn't blink. I just sat there listening to a version of my daughter I hadn't heard in years, and for a moment, the snow outside disappeared, and the weight on my chest lifted just enough to breathe. I stared into the trees for a long time after that. And I still don't know what I was thinking. The roads were still slick on January 2nd, the snow now packed down into icy streaks by tires that had somewhere to be before sunrise. I kept the heater on low and the radio off as I drove down Highway 12, the kind of drive that doesn't require thinking anymore because your body remembers every curve, every faded sign, every stretch where the speed limit's more of a suggestion. The world had that washed-out gray look it gets after a storm, like everything was waiting for someone to clean up the mess, but no one ever does, not really. And that suited me just fine. I didn't go home. Hell, I don't even think I can call it that anymore. A house full of furniture doesn't mean a damn thing if you can't sit anywhere without feeling like an intruder. So instead, I parked outside a small law office sandwiched between a bail bondsman and a vape shop, the kind of place you'd never look at twice unless you had unfinished business and a folder full of facts that no one wants to talk about. Inside, the receptionist barely glanced up when I walked in. That was the beauty of places like this. They don't ask questions if you look like you've already had a hell of a morning. I handed her the envelope, thick and sealed tight, with a note taped to the front that said simply, "For Diane Lawson, deliver by January 5th. No explanation. No return address. Just instructions. Inside were documents. Bank statements. Legal transfers. A notarized letter. The details don't matter, not right now, not to you, but just know this. It wasn't revenge I was after. Not anymore. It was clarity. It was distance. It was making sure the next time my name got dragged through a conversation, it came with proof they couldn't rewrite. From there, I drove across town to Mike's place. He was out in the shed working on a busted snowblower, flannel sleeves rolled up to his elbows and grease smeared across his neck. I didn't say much. Just handed him the cabin key and clapped his shoulder once before heading back to my truck. He didn't ask why. That's the kind of friend Mike is. Maybe he figured I needed it more than he did, or maybe he'd already pieced together that something bigger was at play here. Either way, I left that key with a man who didn't need an explanation to do the right thing with it. Back at the house, my old house, things were already shifting. I could feel it before I even turned the corner. The air was tense in that neighborhood, like the silence before a thunderclap. Diane's car was parked crooked in the driveway, Chloe's hatchback out front, and Tyler's beater was idling at the curb like he hadn't bothered to turn the engine off in his hurry to get inside. The door was already cracked open. I guess they thought I might still be in there, waiting in the kitchen like some wounded animal hoping they'd come apologize and make things right. But when they stepped inside, all they found was absence. No couch, no pictures on the walls, no jackets hanging by the door. The place was stripped bare, not trashed, not angry, just gone. Clean, deliberate, final. Every room echoed in ways it hadn't in years. You don't realize how much space your life takes up until it's not there anymore. There was only one thing left behind, a small cardboard box sitting neatly in the center of the living room floor, right under the cheap chandelier we never got around to replacing. Inside that box was a single sheet of paper, folded once. It read, "Turns out, some promises are empty. But not this one. I'm gone. Start over, just like I did." I didn't leave a forwarding address, no contact number, no second chances printed in fine ink at the bottom. Just the truth, written as plainly as I could manage. Because forgiveness, contrary to what they seem to believe, isn't something you can pull out of a drawer when it's convenient. It's earned, over time, through action, not guilt. And trust? Trust is like a bridge that doesn't get rebuilt just because someone says sorry. It needs new wood, new nails, new blueprints. And I wasn't holding the hammer anymore. I left town without a word to anyone else. No social media posts. No long goodbye text messages. Just one final stop, Detroit Metro Airport, long-term parking lot C, where I left my truck with a full tank and an envelope of cash taped to the glove box for whoever needed it more than me. Inside the terminal, I didn't browse or wander. I walked straight to the counter and asked for the first one-way flight that left within the next 2 hours. Didn't matter where. Didn't even flinch when she said Phoenix. I boarded with nothing more than a duffel bag, my wallet, and the burner phone turned off, finally. As the plane lifted from the runway, I looked out at the skyline disappearing beneath the clouds and felt nothing. Not regret. Not relief. Just space. Like I had finally stepped out of a story that was never mine to finish. You can sit there and judge me if you want. Say I abandoned them. Say I should have stayed and fought harder. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am the villain after all. But sometimes, when you spend too long proving you're not the bad guy, you forget to ask yourself if these people are even worth saving. They laughed when they gave me an empty box. They mocked what they thought were my failures and never asked once if I'd actually been trying. So I gave them back something they'd understand: emptiness, but with meaning. With intention. This time, the promise wasn't hollow. This time, it was the only thing that was true. And if they ever want to find me, they'll have to look in places they've never dared to go. Places where honesty doesn't come wrapped in sarcasm. Places where silence isn't punishment, it's peace. Because I'm not coming home. Not now. Not ever. Let them start over. Just like I did.